This crowd rises to its feet. Vaccaro slammed it home. Garland left wing, 3-ball. Perfect! Garland right of the lane, lob to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including FanDuel Sports Network without cable. There's no cost and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. The Cleveland Cavaliers are 19-3. Can you believe it? This has been an incredible start, coming off a win over the Washington Wizards. Not a whole lot of drama in terms of the score, but a little bit with a couple injury scares. But we're going to take today's podcast to go over that, as well as kind of where the Cavs sit at the quarter mark of the season. And joining me today is my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. We're a quarter of the way through the season and on pace to win 70 games. How could you not be feeling good at a time like this?
I think it's 71, right?
It might be. I didn't round.
That's pretty good stuff. It has been a lot of fun. I remember when we did our preseason prediction pod where I stupidly said, I think the Cavs might get off to, a little bit of a slower start. They're trying to integrate the new offense, getting Evan Mobley a little bit more involved. Maybe that's going to lead to some speed bumps along the way. Maybe they can start 18-12. And I remember you remarked, 18-12 is not that slow of a start. That's a great start. 19-3 is even better than either of us could have imagined.
Yeah, I mean, it is. They remain the best team in the league. I mean, not by net rating after a couple of those losses to Atlanta, but, a marquee win. And I got to say, the Washington game was nice because after a very stressful opener against Boston, and you have a couple, low stakes ones, and then you play Atlanta twice and you lose by double digits twice, and then you have to go to Boston, or then you have to host Boston and win for the vibes, and you do, but it's a stressful game start to finish. It was nice just to have just a snoozer, a game where my stress level never got above a 3 out of 10, except for the injuries, of course.
I was about to say, this is once again you revealing yourself to have not watched the game, because when Donovan Mitchell collided with Jonas Valanciunas, I was sitting there Googling right away, dislocated shoulder recovery.
I gotta be honest, I weirdly was at peace with it. I was like, I think he's gonna be all right. I don't know why.
You heard it here first. There Rodriguez rooting against Donovan Mitchell. I did feel better when I saw the replay. I'm like, because it's not like he went shoulder first and there was a collision, like he kind of hit him from the front. I was like, okay, that's not as bad. It just, as Kenny Atkinson described it, I guess it was a stinger. Darius Garland had a bit of a scare as well going into Jonas. I couldn't even kind of call dirty play on that one because I don't think Jonas was even swinging into him.
Is it dirty when you run it, when you're not watching where you're looking and you run into a tree trunk? Because that's pretty much what happened.
Yeah, that was Evan Mobley throwing a little bit of a coffin ball when it came to Darius. Man. I don't know what the high-end upside of that play would have been if he caught the lob in triple coverage, but I don't think it was that great.
If this were an NFL game, you'd have the receiver having terse words with his quarterback.
Absolutely, and you as a Cowboys fan, you are familiar with that kind of pass.
No, my quarterbacks never throw medicine balls. They throw a lot of interceptions, but they actually protect the receivers pretty well.
There you go. But it was great to see, Darius talking to the media after the game. I think that was a good sign. Anytime that there is a head injury, there's the possibility that he pops up on the injury report. Haven't seen anything like that today. Kenny seemed to think that this wasn't going to be an issue. And
it's just so hard to know because it's like, they're killing him, and so there's no reason to bring him back just in case he does have something. But it does lead to a certain ambiguity as to what actually is going on. And honestly, I still wouldn't be surprised if he popped up on the injury report going into tomorrow.
Yeah. But neck soreness even, as a result of that.
Who knows? But because it was just one of those ambiguous outcomes. But certainly seems like we avoided the worst. Darius was in the locker room and talking and having a good time. So can't be that bad.
I would encourage any of our listeners to check out the videos that Spencer Davies puts together for those locker room interviews. He always kind of puts together these, super cuts of the conversations and the jokes and whatnot going on. And I really enjoy the work that he's been doing this season. So I want to give a little shout out to our buddy Spencer. But
Ben's been killing it, man. Doing great on the beat. Always gets the best reactions from Kenny on his questions as well. Which admittedly is a somewhat low bar because you could ask Kenny anything and he'd be like, "Oh man,
I've been dying to talk about this."
Oh man, that's a great question. Kenny is the most charitable press conference receiver of all time.
Honestly, and again, I must encourage our listeners, if you're watching us on YouTube after you're done with this podcast, go watch some of the Kenny pre and post game because he really does give you a lot.
I watch every one.
I'm not used to that. I'm trying to get into the habit of that because I'm not used to that really from any coach, really kind of giving the in-depth of the process. But, as a process over results nerd, I'm certainly enjoying it.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever sat and just watched a Cavs coach's post game like press availability or practice availability. I watch every single one with Kenny because you tend to learn something.
Yeah, it has been really interesting. But, in addition to dodging bullets with both Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, we did get some good news. Dean Wade returned to the lineup against Washington. I think anytime a guy is coming back from a lower body injury, I kind of expect it to take some time to get back up to game speed. I thought, he moved around pretty well, all things considered. The defense is obviously always there. He certainly helps on that end and cleaning up the glass. But, he didn't hit his shots. But anytime you're dealing with an ankle sprain, and I expect the same thing when Max comes back, it limits what you can do from kind of a cardio and staying in shape kind of standpoint. So I always expect a little bit of a runway here, but the good news for the Cavs is they don't have a lot of games coming up. Outside of this 3 and 4, after they play 3 games in 4 nights with Denver, Charlotte, and Miami, they play 2 games in 12 days. So if there was ever a time to get some practices in, nurse some wounds, I think this is pretty much the ideal time.
Yeah, man. In general, it just, I was thinking about the schedule just has felt pretty light this year in terms of the quality of competition. It feels like they haven't had a ton of gotta circle that one on the calendar games. And, I was even thinking about, I was thinking they had one with Denver tomorrow night, and Denver is 8-10, or 10-8, sorry, or 11-8 now that they came back last night. Even Denver, a traditional West power, is on pace to win 45 games. I just feel like the league being so top heavy with OKC, Houston, which is ridiculous, still hard to say out loud, Cleveland and Boston, it just kind of makes, everyone else just kind of feels pretty not special by comparison. And part of this is there's just not as many marquee games to go around because the Cavs have escalated into a tier above almost everyone they're playing, which is kind of fun.
It is kind of fun. And, I actually was reflecting about this the other day, talking to our buddy Keith Smith, who's been on the podcast before. But I was saying how before seasons, we used to do a lot of those preview podcasts where we'd interview, someone from the Atlanta Hawks, the Detroit Pistons, Toronto Raptors, and talk about, both of these teams, we have, young cores, similar timelines. We could build a rivalry here. And now we've elevated to a tier where the rival's Boston. It's Boston, it's New York. New York is kind of righted the ship, and I think they're going to be in that mix this year. But you're right, the number of kind of litmus test games for the Cleveland Cavaliers, it's gone downhill. It is a result of the tier that they've elevated themselves to. But it's a really fun place to be because I think we are still chasing the Boston Celtics, and that's the standard to hold ourselves against. But that chase is fun. It is fun to be the team that, they're not going to be, no one's going to be picking them in that series.
No.
But it's not like the Cavs are sitting here being disrespected at the same time. They are getting a lot of national love. There is a general kind of consensus that what this team has done to this point is legitimate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, other than unless you were watching NBA TV after that Celtics game, oh my gosh, it was just a parade of anti-Cavs takery. It was Sam Mitchell is on the list. Let me tell you. Raptors legend Sam Mitchell.
Maybe he's taking up for those Toronto Raptors, and that was my concern with Jonas when we kept colliding into him. I'm like, did he take those 4 years personally? I hope he didn't.
I cannot imagine he thought about that for a single second. But
I hope he did. I kind of hope he did.
But anyway, it was it does feel like they are just on another level, and like that was one of the first times realizing that like right now, obviously, I think if the Cavs and the Nuggets were to play in a series, the odds would be pretty even. They have the championship pedigree and all that stuff. But like as it currently stands in the season in terms of current run of play, the Cavs just aren't going to have a lot of those peer-to-peer matchups, which is in a way fun. In a way, there's a lot of pressure on every game because much like the second LeBron era, there's a certain expectation that you better win. I think people are if they don't take care of business at home against Denver, people are going to be like, "Damn, they blew it." Like they blew a game they should have won at home.
And you're also going to be getting every team's best punch. Like the Atlanta Hawks really wanted to come out and make a statement against the Cavs, right? And they wanted to advance in the NBA Cup. So I do think, even though Denver's been off to a tougher start, they're still going up against the best player on the planet right now. Like Nikola Jokic is probably the MVP frontrunner right now, and I'm interested in that matchup for the same reason I was really interested with the matchup against the Lakers, where it's Evan Mobley and Jared Allen going up against one of the premier big men in the league. And you're probably correct that if they played in a series, the odds would be pretty even. But the thing is, we've seen this before. How a matchup looks on paper is one thing, but the best player in a series is capable of winning any given series. And that is certainly true for any given game. So when you're going up against someone like Jokic that has the ability to elevate everybody on that team, that's going to be a real test for the Cavs. They've had 2 good defensive performances in a row. They played really well defensively against Boston, and I thought, even though the offense was a little disjointed against Washington, I thought they came out with a good focus on the defensive end of the court. They're going to need to continue that, because if there is, a rotation that is a half step slow, Jokic is going to find that guy.
Yeah, I love playing Denver. I just love it. It's such a test of your team's IQ and like almost a test of your team's like seriousness. I know that's like maybe a stupid way to frame it, but like how ready were you to go to work today? Because like there's a degree of locked in mentally. You just have to be. I always love to see how Jarrett and Evan handle someone who's just straight up better than them, like when they can play, I think about the game where he fouled out or got kicked out. I don't remember which one it was last year. And that was such a tentpole moment, because you're in the MVP's head. And like, that's a really valuable thing to get. So I'm just really excited for this one. I think we're going to learn a lot about the bigs and how they can hold up. We'll see how the guards do attacking that drop from Jokic, and whether they're going to come up to the level. It's going to be a really, really fun one.
Yeah, and it's a more interesting matchup too, because Aaron Gordon is back. He's a game time decision, but he has been listed as probable, so I think you can expect him to play. He played yesterday, December 3rd. And they're a different team when they have Jamal Murray, when they have Michael Porter Jr., when they have Aaron Gordon and Nikola Jokic. That's a better team than their record. That is kind of the full strength core of the Denver Nuggets, and they're going to want to show playing against the best team in the league to this point that they are still there, right? Like they are still a contender. They're trying to right the ship.
Yeah,
so
we don't have a lot of tentpole games on our schedule, but we are one for teams like Denver. A team like Denver who is not going through it, because it's not like they're bad, not like they're in danger of missing the postseason or anything. But the West is bananas. Right now they are the 8th seed in the West because of that, even though they're 3 games over 500. And like ultimately, like them taking an L drops them out of home court in the play-in.
Yeah.
Obviously it's so early, but whatever. Drops them down another rung. And and a win would be just huge. It would be such a momentum thing for them. They had a huge comeback against Golden State, who is in free fall right now, and like I do think they're going to come in pretty hungry.
Yeah, I think so too. From a Cavs injury standpoint, Ty Jerome is listed as questionable with the illness. Chris Fedor on his podcast today was mentioning that, this has been something that's been going through the team for a while. He mentioned that they've been getting kind of precautionary x-rays on their chest to see if, what's going on, getting additional recovery drinks after the game. We it's one of those things that we don't really think about. You see the guys out there on the court and you never know, are they at 80%? I would love to attribute that to some of the sloppiness we've seen in recent weeks at times on the defensive end, but I don't think that's necessarily fair. But it
makes flu season, man, and you hope everyone's getting their flu shots, but these guys are in such close proximity to each other. If you try to gut it out in play, the chances of you infecting your teammates goes up. It's kind of a no-win, man. You either because almost no one's gonna, because the right thing to do if this was a normal job is you got the flu, you have to go home for a week and no working this week or whatever.
Everyone's working from home for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah,
and we'll be better that way.
But you can't do that here, so they always have to kind of. I'm glad I don't have to make those kind of calls. It just seems like such a no-win, because either you hold someone out for too long and keep the rest of the team healthy, or you come back and risk other guys getting sick. And it's no wonder that, and I feel like we all should just get it reported more than we used to on I don't feel like we knew when teams were getting the bug, in
the past.
I feel like it was whatever, but there's a little bit more reporting. Maybe that's post-COVID, I don't know, but we do tend to know, and it's he's out with the flu 2 days later. This guy's out with the flu 2 days later. This guy's out with the flu. And it's that's what the flu does.
Them's the breaks. And some people, they get a more mild version and they're able to play through it or whatever the case may be. I'm still going to blame Franz Wagner. I had this thought. When we did that pregame interview and they're like, Franz has been playing through the flu, I was like, God, it's going to hit the team. And ever since then, it's been Dean Wade. It's been up and down the locker room. So I'm going to blame Franz because
cracking ribs and filling up lungs with fluid. That man.
Even something like Donnie dealing with a headache the last couple of weeks because he had the wrong prescription for his glasses. Things like that we don't think about that can have an impact.
I didn't know he was playing basketball basically blind, by the way.
I did. Yeah.
I think I had missed that memo.
Yeah, I think he shared that anecdote before, but he actually did inspire me because I was like, I always have pain in my left eye, and I've noticed doing the podcast that my left eye is always a little more squinty. I finally got an eye exam today, Carter, and your boy needs glasses. I'm a little farsighted in one eye. How about that?
I'm excited. I think frames will look nice on you, brother.
I'm not totally stoked about it because I always feel like I can see really well. I've always had
glasses
great vision.
are in, bro. That's just. It's one of the rare bits of accessorizing men get to do.
That's true. That's
why men do so many things with their beard, because that's my only toy.
Well, the downside of that would be, the glare and the reflection of everything I'm looking at when you're talking.
I already know you're not listening, brother.
Yeah, I know it's pretty transparent, but it's going to be even more transparent. There is going to be a literal screen on my face to be able to see that, so that's no fun. But as I said, today we're going to get into kind of where the Cavs stand at the quarter mark. And what I really want to focus on is the team overall and how the starters have been performing, because we haven't had Max Strus, but we have finally got a decent sample size of what Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen look like when they're all healthy together. We didn't get this many games last year. We certainly got this many games played, but when they were playing games, everyone was playing through something. And I think, the fact that this has not only been similar to what we saw in 22-23 when they were healthy and very good together, but a step forward is one of the leading causes for this team being so successful this year.
Yeah, man. It's and again, we still don't have the full starters together,
Mm-hmm.
We still don't have Max. By the way, what a win this light schedule in December is for Max, because it's as he's going through that final ramp up. I don't know about final. There's not been much reporting on when he's coming back. as of yet.
As he goes through a ramp up.
As he's going through his ramp up
taking part of
and his recovery, it's just like you're missing minimal games. Ideally, the team's practicing a little bit more so you can get a couple actual reps. Like pretty healthy. But yeah, I mean, the core is, I think we've actually been remarkably restrained with our I told you so's this year about the core four and their ability to play together.
I do have a habit to be a little bit annoying. So the fact that I've been as restrained as I have been is probably a good sign. But yeah, it's been great so far this season. Right now they have the number 2 offense, the New York Knicks. Congratulations to them. They have taken over the number 1 spot there.
Which talk about a thing that needs to happen for them to be what they want to be. Like, there's no version of the Knicks that works if they don't have the best offense in the league.
Yeah, and the thing I find interesting too, so we're 9th defensively, but we are 2 points better. We're allowing 2 points fewer in terms of defensive rating than we did last year when we were ranked 7th defensively. And I think, it's interesting because last year we did see the highest offensive rating of all time at 122, but everyone else's offensive ratings are a little deflated. Like the Eastern Conference right now has 3 teams with an offensive rating over 120. The best offense in the West is 116.5. That's Dallas. Like that's a big gap. That's
the punchless when you're talking about that's what we call it.
It's so everyone looks at the winning records in the West. Maybe it's just all these anemic offenses
just playing sluggish basketball.
They can't pull away from one another. Maybe that's what it is. You know.
Yeah, no one can score enough to be. I don't know. This is a half-baked bit, but it's fine. Continue with your actual point you're going to make.
I was just thinking, it is interesting, but the Cavs, it's not like they have. On the flip side, it's not like the offenses of the Eastern Conference are inflated by only playing against the East too, right? Because the Cavs had great offensive performances against some of these top defenses in the West, right? Like we shredded the Golden State Warriors. They played well against the Lakers. They've done well in all these kind of cross-conference matchups, and they've played really well against great defenses in the Eastern Conference as well. So I do think that now that we're at this 22-game mark, you can start to put real stock in this. I think that the offense is absolutely legitimate, and I'm not too concerned about the defense. Like I still feel like our offense is going to regress to some degree because the 3-point shooting still overall for the season is higher than it's realistic to expect it to be sustainable. But I still do feel on the defensive end that's going to be coming down as well, because particularly in certain lineups, which we'll get into later, like it's just been unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, they have the worst
shooting percentages.
They have the worst opposing shot luck in the league. I mean, that might not be the case anymore after playing the Wizards, which are truly the ballast that helps all your catch-all ratings look better. But it's even worth noting the Cavs went from 11th to 9th in defensive rating just last night, and they're at 110.4, and 7th place is 110. So they're actually quite close to being, the 7th best defense in the league. Like they're at 9. They're like, that's a big glut of teams. Obviously, the Thunder are miles ahead of everyone else at 104. But I do think a top 4, top 5 defense is still very much within the realm of opportunity by the time we get to the end of the year.
Yeah, teams are shooting the 3rd best percentage from 3 on those kind of wide open looks. I tend to look at the percentages of those wide open shots rather than, the overall percentages, because I just feel if you're giving up a high number of open looks, which the Cavs still are, they are 10th in terms of how many they give up, but it's still, a higher number than you would expect on those. Like that you have to take into consideration. Like the Oklahoma City Thunder have the best defense in the league, and they give up more wide open threes than the Cavs, right? So like, it's not like their open shots are better defended than the Cavs open shots, right? So
yeah,
those stats
noting,
do typically normalize, but I still would like to see that number come down in terms of where they rank in terms of giving up those shots, because I do feel like that has been one of the biggest differences from years past, where in the past they gave up near the fewest in the league, and that's where those theories of they're just shooting over guys it came into play.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, look at their peers up at the top of the bad shooting luck power rankings in terms of how teams shoot percentage wise on wide open threes. The worst is the Pistons, one of the worst teams in the league by record. The Kings, a losing
The
team.
Pistons haven't been that bad.
They're 9-14 though. They're near the bottom. They're in that group.
Yeah.
The Pistons a losing team, the Kings a losing team, the Pelicans a losing team, the 76ers a losing team, the Blazers a losing team, the Bucks barely a winning team, the Heat a losing team, the Hawks a losing team, and then so like your top like 9, you have losing records, and then you have the 19-3 Cavaliers.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is meaningful to me because all these other teams, especially teams like the Heat, the Bucks, the Sixers, they can rightfully be like, oh man, we'd be just a little bit, like we're not perfect, but we're getting kind of killed by, Lady Luck here. Cavs are getting killed by Lady Luck, and they're still on track to win 70, 71 games. It's unbelievable.
That's a really good point. And, we talked about the Knicks riding the ship. The same could be said about the Bucks. They're riding a 7-game winning streak. And, I still don't feel, when I'm looking at the Eastern Conference and kind of projecting for this season, I still feel like the top 3, Boston, Cleveland, and New York. I don't think Milwaukee is necessarily on that level, but Giannis falls into that category where I think he could win any series that he's in against any team. That includes the Boston Celtics, to be honest. I just don't know if that roster is built to win 4 rounds with some of the flaws that they have. But that's a team on the rise. The East is kind of shaping up, and it's funny that early season stretch that they had where the panic was really setting in nationally and whatnot. It kind of is worth noting that a lot of those losses, it's like, oh, we lost to Boston twice, we lost to Cleveland twice, and that's our first 7 games. Like, that's not great. Like, that sometimes strength of schedule in a small sample can lead to some overreactions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I honestly didn't leave either of our games against Milwaukee being like, that team is garbage. Like they have
and
useful.
We got good punches from them.
Yeah.
Like Dame had great games.
Yeah, we got good punches, but like there are games against bad teams that give you a good punch, and you still leave the game going, that's a bad team that had a nice night. Mm-hmm. I didn't leave that feeling the Bucks. I was like, this does not feel like one of these cellar dweller teams. Like,
no,
I think they just needed to stop playing certain guys and start playing other certain guys. Like AJ Green, who's now a starter for them, and sometimes those little changes can kind of just change the shape of your team.
Yeah, sometimes it just takes time to note what's working and what's not working. And, if you ever need help, keep taking notes. Things like Zoom AI Companion can be very helpful because only you can do your best work. Zoom AI Companion can help you do the rest, like automatically taking notes, answering meeting questions, and helping you respond to your coworker. Available at no additional cost with eligible paid plans. Work happy with Zoom AI Companion. Carter, I want to start things off talking about kind of the individual core members with Evan Mobley, because I think that is by far the most interesting kind of angle to take, because we want to see what Evan Mobley can do this season. As we chase the Boston Celtics, we got 6 months here until a possible playoff series in all likelihood against them. How much better Evan Mobley gets over those 6 months is going to be the most important storyline, in my opinion. And I want to get your thoughts. What have you thought of his game lately? How have you felt about it? I still feel like he's very heavily involved in terms of the offense, and certainly was in the Washington game. But there have been times where it has felt like he's a little less involved than we saw at the start of the year.
Let me just drop a little angst watch on you midway through the pod. I was noting heading into last night's game that I felt like the offense had done just the teensiest bit of regression to what they were doing last year. Like, still to great results, but a lot more guard initiated stuff. And Mobley was operating more, in my opinion, as a play finisher. He'd been doing a little less initiating. So I looked it up. First 10 games, he had about a 24.5% usage rating. The 11 games since, like a 20.5% usage rating. So about a 4% drop, which is not insignificant. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. It's not an insignificant amount. The touches are up, so I'm not quite sure how to reconcile that, but my eyes tell me, Justin, that there's still a degree to which I think they are much more comfortable letting him do the Evan Mobley show against teams like Washington. And I think there is a certain I think some of that comfort level goes away under duress against some of the better defensive teams. And maybe that's not fair. It probably isn't fair, but it is something that I wonder about because, like I said it on a recent pod with you, like everything about this offense, like, yeah, it's great. I love that we're, setting records and doing all this kind of stuff. But in the end, all that really matters is the offense going to work against the best defenses in a playoff setting? So it's like,
is it going to work versus Boston, right?
Yeah, is it going to work versus Boston is really what it comes down to. And like, do you trust right now that they're going to run offense through Mobley in those matchups? I'm like at 40% trust.
I think that's mostly fair, and I don't think it's necessarily a negative that, okay, we're going to give Mobley more reps in some of these matchups. Like, I think that is the correct way to use the regular season, right? And I still think that it's important to use him as a hub and to use him against those best teams because we've said it for years. Like, in order to beat those best defenses, you're going to need that front court playmaker. But I do think, it's interesting because you mentioned how the usage went down. So the last 3 weeks, 20.5 usage. The sample size of the season prior to that, it was 23.1. As you said, 24 in the first 10. I do think it is interesting, though, that the number of touches overall is up, as you mentioned, during that stretch. So not only is the touches up to 62 a game from 57, but the number of front court touches is up. So touches that are initiated in the front court, so coming over the half court line, up to 29 from 27. So it's not just, okay, he got a rebound, that counts as a touch, and he gave it up to a ball handler. He is still being used in those half court sets. So I think it's a combination of things. I think there obviously is a higher level of comfort when you're going against a team like the Washington Wizards that isn't giving you as much pressure defensively. And the other thing is, I think some of the onus needs to be on Evan Mobley too, because as you said, I think you are right that they are more comfortable running it the way that they have in the past. But I think Evan Mobley sometimes gets a little comfortable that way too, right? Where he's not being as assertive as he needs to be. If we had a stretch where, okay, Darius is only taking 5 threes a game for this week, we wouldn't say, oh, the offense has gone away from Darius taking threes. We would say Darius is passing up too many threes. And I think the same thing can be said for Evan Mobley attacking defenders and driving. And he needs to maintain that aggressive edge. But I do think how he attacks may look different against the Boston Celtics. It may look different against, Kristaps Porzingis and what he's able to do at the rim. So maybe the rest of the season is about troubleshooting that and finding ways to keep him engaged and keep him aggressive and keep him involved in the offense, but still keeping it within an offensive set that can still produce points at an efficient enough rate to keep up with an offense like the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I also think to some extent, it's not just a mentality thing or not just a point of emphasis thing. It's a what's going to work the best thing,
Yeah.
Because like, as we've noted, like as geeked as we are about Evan's progression, like there are certain things that you still want to see get better. The handle still can be a little loose, and when you're playing against Boston and you're trying to run, Sam Merrill setting that screen at the elbow and Drew Holiday is meeting you and you don't have a tight handle, it's probably not going to work. like he's just going to rip you or make your life hard or stonewall you because he's strong as hell. So it's like some of this, there is a degree, like whether we like it or not, there probably is a degree of like utilitarian, like what's going to work in this game we really want to win.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's really easy to say you're going to experiment and try new things. It's really hard to do it in a game against a really good team that you really, really want to beat.
And it might not always be a conscious decision too, right? Like it might be his comfort level of, okay, I'm going to give up the ball in a dribble handoff, right? And, I think that this falls under the same category as the crunch time offense that we've talked about of, all right, let's see what the offense looks like under duress. Do the guards go into their natural habit of slowing things down, or do we continue to work through that as the season progresses, where there is still the cutting, there still is the motion, we are still attacking with tempo? I think that is just one of those things to keep an eye on, because I don't think it would be fair to characterize Mobley's season to this point as, he's explored the space against lesser teams and then we've gone away from it against the better teams, because we've seen those dominant performances against great defenses. We've seen him go right at Anthony Davis and take advantage of that matchup. We've seen him against Orlando. We've seen him against some really, really good defenses. Golden State Warriors came in with, the second best defense in the league, and Evan Mobley just completely had Draymond Green's head spinning. So I don't think that this is a...
Yeah, I'm not trying to be reductive here. It's just it's a small trend.
I'm not saying that you were. I just want to clarify that point, because I agree with your point. But I also think, it again speaks to him getting comfortable, him retaining that confidence and building upon it. Because the one thing that I think we can consistently say about Evan Mobley's tenure with the Cavs is he gets better as the season progresses. After January, after February of each year, he has added something to his game, and he is playing better than he did at the front half of the season. So I think highlighting stretches like this where, who knows, maybe it was fatigue. Like, I think being tired might be part of it, because they did play such a condensed schedule at the start of the year. Maybe as, we're playing, what is it, 5 games in 15 days? Maybe after this stretch, we see a more consistent attack from Evan Mobley. Like, I just think pointing it out on the front end gives us something to look for as we're watching these games. And same goes for our listeners.
Absolutely, brother. Let's move on. Let's talk about Jared Allen. What are you seeing with him?
So with Jared, I've kind of felt peaks and valleys. I thought to start the year was some of the best we've ever seen from Jared Allen. I thought he was phenomenal. I did feel like there was a little bit of a lull, particularly when the defense was experiencing some slippage. He had games where he was very efficient offensively, but I just didn't notice him. I didn't feel him on the defensive end as much. Some of that might be playing the result. You look at those lineups with he and Darius, and teams are shooting like 6% better from 3 than they are when they're off the court, which is like at the bottom percentile for those type of swings. Like, that type of stuff isn't sustainable. That's a shot luck thing, and I think that's dragging down some of his catch-all metrics. Like, he's in the 78th percentile for defensive effective plus minus. He hasn't been lower than 88th since his first year in Cleveland. And that's a stat that is influenced by kind of those on-off numbers and can be influenced by kind of the shot variance type thing. But, I do think that more so than Mobley, like Mobley, I think we can attribute some of the games where he isn't as assertive offensively to a lack of aggression at times. When it comes to Jared, he is really reliant on everybody else. Like, and I think he's almost that litmus test for how healthy the offense is, how good the ball movement is. I feel like his movement offensively has been really good. Jared Weiss had a phenomenal column about the Cavs offense where, just Jared Allen and others buying into the sacrificial cut and the movement and the spacing that generates. I think he's been terrific there. But I have felt a little bit of a slippage from him defensively. But it does feel like it's trending back up. I feel like the last couple games, I'm feeling him a little bit more on the defensive end. So one of those things to keep an eye on. But overall, I've been very happy with Jared. I just feel like his production is so much more dependent on everybody else.
Yeah, I got to remember he also had that leg, that minor leg issue that popped up. And
it's a good point.
He is a guy who is really dependent on his mobility. Something I've noticed on defense with him, I don't feel like he's had as good of a time on switches this year. I feel like, I was even watching, when I was doing the breakdown of Jason Tatum on Darius Garland, I was watching all of Tatum's assists, and like Jared has always been a killer switched onto these big physical wings like Tatum, like Luka. He's always really held up well there. The closeouts are just like a little worse than they have been in the past. Don't know if that's the legs, don't know what it is. So I do think there's a bit of slippage there. I think on the other side of the ball, though, I think he's been freaking unbelievable. for the most part. He's had 3 quiet games in a row, one of which because, Washington, he only played 25 minutes. But a couple quiet games against Atlanta where things weren't quite right. But like even his quiet games, he's just not going to miss more than 2 or 3 shots. So the floor is really, really high. The rebounding is better than it's ever been.
Yeah. Career best rebounds per 100 possessions. So you almost have to look at all the 100 possession or per 36 stats when it comes to the Cavs because they're just not playing it as much as they used to.
Yeah, I mean he is one of the Cavaliers starters still under 30 minutes per game right now, and he is currently putting up the best field goal percentage of his career at 70.4. So. I think Jarrett has been kind of, the same old reliable he's always been. I think to your point, there is a bit of luck at play, and I do think the switches have been a little worse. I can't put it quite to words, and I certainly don't have the data to back that up. Because anytime, and really, 20 games of switch data on a big are kind of going to be BS no matter what, because it's just going to be dependent on how many step backs were made.
And also, he had a lower leg thing, or maybe he was one of the guys battling the flu. There's so many things that can go into a relatively small sample. But
yeah, I also think there's a degree to which not having Dean for the last 4 or 5 games, that kind of stuff does matter because your installation when Jarrett does have to switch is a little depreciated, and I don't think he recovers as well as Evan does. I do think this is the first year where I think Evan has clearly been the best defensive player on the roster.
Yeah.
And that's no slight to Evan. I think it's just Jarrett has, it's no slight to Jarrett in the sense that I just think Evan's taken another leap on that end. But
to your point, and some of this is the shot luck that I talked about before with the 3-point shooting, but if you look at the cleaning the glass numbers that filters out garbage time, when they're together, it's a 112.3 defensive rating. When it's just Mobley, it's a 101.2 defensive rating.
Ooh.
And when it's just Allen, it's a 120.1 defensive rating.
And that's just not real. I would probably argue neither number is real.
Yeah. That number is going to come down when it comes to that just Allen number. But oh my God, 101.2. And the funny thing is, so much of the too big conversation comes about the offensive end of the court. The highest offensive rating out of those 3 combinations is the Mobley and Allen together offensive rating. It's a 122.7. The just Allen comes behind 121.2, and the just Mobley comes at 119.4, which is lower than what we do when they're together and whatnot, but would be the best offense in the Western Conference. We will continue to slander the weak West.
Yeah, it's just not a very good conference, just a lot of feckless offenses trying to find their way, and I'm rooting for them,
Yeah, I hope they figure it out. It'd be nice to see. Also want to give a shout out to Jarrett. He is averaging his best career total in terms of steals per 100 possessions as well. So, the active hands are certainly still there, and I've felt that. If he continues to ramp up, and I think as the team gets better and healthier, he's just going to look better and better because he's one of those guys that does benefit from a healthy offensive ecosystem.
And no one benefits from a raised tide like Jarrett Allen.
Yeah, and speaking of raised tides, we got to talk about our guy Darius, because oh my God, he has been fantastic offensively. I mentioned before that the best offensive rating in NBA history was last year at 122.2. Do you want to know what the offensive rating with just Darius on the court is this year?
I'm gonna guess 127.
131.
Whoa! I was being aggressive.
It's 131. It is just absolutely absurd. And, some of the hallmarks of Darius's game are right back. I think a lot was made of the turnovers last year when he was dealing with the hand injury. The year prior, he was second in the league in terms of assist to turnover ratio behind Jokic. He's once again second in terms of assist to turnover ratio for players with his usage and assist percentage. He's trailing Jalen Brunson actually this year, and he is just ahead of Nikola Jokic, Damian Lillard, and Trae Young.
And it's not just And like I would argue that in years past that was buoyed by his assist numbers to some extent being really, really high, and that's certainly good. But he's averaging a career low turnover percentage, just 12.7%. And his turnovers per 36 is under 3, which is also a career best. So like his turnovers are way down. I think a lot of that, by the way, is hand in hand with the improved 3-point rate. He's still taking 8 threes per 36, which is 1.3 higher than his prior career best. And I think when you do that, when you're just bombing from 3 a little bit more regularly, you're doing less of the pump fake, try to fit a small window pass in for a layup. Like, I would argue, I don't think he's making inherently better decisions as a passer than he has in years past. I think he's just not putting himself in a spot where he has to make a bad decision very often.
So I find it interesting that you bring this up, and it's perfect timing with that Jared Weiss piece, which again, I would recommend people read it, because one of the things in there was talking about how in years past, Darius actually kind of had what his playmaking reads premeditated. Like they were outlined for him. He was told basically what the pass was going to be. It's one of 2 options, whereas now he has to make the read in real time coming off of those screens. And he was talking about how he didn't feel comfortable with it at first, and now he likes it. They like what they're doing offensively, but there was a learning curve with that. I think he is actually making better reads in terms of spraying it out to the corners. I think he's playmaking for 3-point shooters a whole lot better. And I just feel like he's not getting stuck with the decision making. He's not getting stuck in the air as frequently as he was, particularly last year. Maybe last year is coloring my perception a little bit because it was so different than 22-23.
Yeah, he was one of the worst live ball turnover players in the league in terms of like just getting ripped even.
Yeah, and he is back to taking care of the ball at one of the best rates in the league. And just so people know, the reason why I don't just use usage rate to determine that is usage rate does not account for possessions where you are generating assist for other players. So by taking both the usage rate and the assist percentage, you're really kind of capturing the total offensive load that he is responsible for when he's on the court. The other thing that's come back from 22-23 is the offensive difference with him on and off the court. The offense is 11.3 points better with him on the court versus off the court.
That's like a Jokic level split.
Yeah, I think I was listening to the Dunked On podcast because they were doing their quarter of a season awards, which is a little ridiculous, but I still enjoy it from an analysis standpoint.
Been really enjoying that podcast lately, by the way. They're doing great work.
They are doing great work, and that is not at all colored by the fact that they had 3 Cavaliers on all NBA teams, including our boy Darius. But 11.3 swing with him on the court. And here's what I find really interesting, because when that was true in 22-23, the offense was 7.7 points better, and that was the difference between a top 5 offense and the 29th offense in the league. This year, that 11.3 is the difference between the best offense in history and still a pretty decent offense. Like it's the 15th best offense if you look at what they do with Darius off of the court. If you look at Donnie's on-court offensive rating, we have a 114.6 rating with Donnie on the court, which would be the 9th best offense in the league. So, Darius has elevated it to such a higher level. And if you just look at the on-off splits, it's like, oh, why is the offense so much worse with Donnie on the court? When in reality, that's still a top 10 offense and is probably going to get better as well. Like, I expect that gap to narrow as the season progresses. But he really has been kind of that tide that raises all boats when it comes to the Cavs offense this season.
That was always kind of our foundational philosophy with him, even when he was on his kind of way up, like before the All-Star year, where it's like, hey, this offense just kind of seems to make sense when Darius has the keys. And it still feels that way to this day. Justin, he's flirting with 50, 40, 90 right now. He is just 0.6 of a percentage point below 50% from the field. He's at 45% from 3 still, and a cool 95% from the line. So the scoring efficiency is high. The assist to turnover efficiency is high. There are not a lot of point guards I would rather have this season than Darius Garland.
No, no. And, I thought dunked on having him. I think Danny had him third team All NBA. Nate had him second team All NBA. Like, I think he deserves to be in that consideration. I think he should absolutely be an All Star going into this season, assuming that this continues. And the catch-all defensive metrics aren't better, mostly because of kind of that 3-point swing that I was referring to earlier. But I do feel like he is playing the best defense of his career. He's at a career high in terms of blocks per 100 possessions. The steal rate is still very high. He's always been good in that category, and I feel like he's been competing on that end at a high level. And, I just think that he is such a malleable player that and it's been one of our favorite things about his game and talking about team building around Darius, because he really does work with any combination of player, because he can work so well on and off the ball. And I just feel like defensively, he's getting better on and off the ball. Like the screen navigation has gone better. He's holding his own. He's battling on both ends of the court. I really like, we wanted him to get back to where he was at 22, 23. We were insistent that was his best year of his career, even though he didn't make All-Star. But I feel like what we've seen so far this year is better than any version of Darius that we've seen before. And, this is what I was hoping for last year. This is, I came into that year saying that I didn't expect an Evan Mobley leap, but I expected Darius to get into the All-NBA conversation. Here we are. Here is that victory lap, Carter, that you were talking about earlier. Darius is absolutely going to be in those types of conversations, assuming the year continues like this.
Yeah, and and credit to Darius, credit to the front office for clearly not wavering in their belief in the guy. Credit to Kenny, who came in going, in that initial press conference before the season started, just being like, dude, I want to coach this guy. This is my kind of player,
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could tell he kind of seemed, to me, he seemed as excited about coaching Darius as he seemed to be coaching Evan, if not more, Kenny said it before. He was a guard. He's a guard coach. And he found a team with two elite on-ball guards and to work with. And it's been really, really fun to see. It's been so nice and so validating, because, like, as much, and I said this as much last year when Darius was really going through, is like, hey, I don't believe that this is who he is, but, like, players have their careers derailed. Guys who
Muscle
are
memory's a thing, man. Yeah. Like, especially when it comes to, basketball careers and basketball relationships, sometimes that, it's bad luck, but that kind of stuff can stick.
Yeah, stuff sticks sometimes. And sometimes guys just can't get right, or they start forcing it and they get themselves the yips, and things can really go the wrong direction. Like, even as a pretty staunch Darius defender last year, in terms of, like, I don't think this is who he is, even though it's not going very well. I did feel the need to be like, hey, this is possible, and the Cavs have to consider that to some extent. They have to wait to some extent. So it's like so nice that it's just like, nope, blip. Moving on. Just a blip. Don't worry about it, guys.
With that. It's fine. And, I think you are correct in every name that you've listed, giving credit for what we've seen so far this year. But there was one name missing, and I think that's Donovan Mitchell. I think he deserves as much credit as anybody for the way that the team is playing. I think when you have this level of buy-in from your best player, it makes it easier for everybody else. And I think he's, along with Jared Allen, I think he's had to sacrifice the most, because he's coming off the best playmaking season of his career. This year, he actually has the lowest assist percentage of his career. It's tied with his rookie year. He's just not being used in that same way. The scoring is still up, but he's at the lowest free throw rate of his career. But what we are seeing from him is when he's being used, it's more efficient than ever. Even though, the shooting splits are down, and I think that's, skewed by that Hawks game and a couple games recently. I still think that he is playing more efficient as a player. Like, the shot diet is better. He's at his career best turnover percentage. It's down to 8.8%. The previous best was 10.3. So Darius, as you said, is at the lowest turnover percentage. Donnie's at the lowest career percentage. He's at career best rebounding rate, so he's filling in the gaps. He's making that extra effort. The usage rate still around kind of that career average, but it's down from where it was in the past. but he's also contributing on the defensive end. 91st percentile in defensive effective plus minus. I can't even talk right now because we've been podcasting for too long. But it's at the best rate of his career. Like he is contributing on defense. He is continuing to get those steals, to contribute on the glass. And I think his offensive sacrifices have set the table for a healthier offensive balance where, Darius is the lead initiator. Mobley's taking a larger ownership of the offense overall, and he gets to be that play finisher. I just feel like this is the healthy ecosystem. This is the best version of the Cavs, and this was the version of the team that I wanted to see when everyone was calling for martyr ball last season.
Yeah, so for what it's worth, couple things. Some of his field goal efficiencies are down. But he's still got the second highest effective field goal percentage of his career, because he is bombing away from three, Justin. He has his career best in 3-point attempts per 36, averaging 10.5. And I do think there is a degree to which I have noticed he is pacing himself more in in the level of exertion he is putting on his body. And you really notice it more when he decides to really go for it and turn it on. That fourth quarter against Boston in the first game where he is, because there's just torque, man. He's putting so much torque on his knees every time he's kind of
plays like a running back.
Yeah, he reminds me of Barry Sanders, man, when he's really attacking in these small spaces and figuring out when and how to explode. And I feel like he's had to do that less in this offense without giving up too much efficiency, because he's just taking more catch and shoot threes. He's getting, he's able to just pull a little bit more. I feel like even though, he played some of his worst basketball of the season in terms of effectiveness against Atlanta, in that second game, I feel like Donovan is looks more and more comfortable than he's looked at any point this season.
Yeah.
Like in terms of, he seems to know when and how to attack more than he did the first 2 weeks of this season.
I totally agree. And I still just keep going back to the buy-in. I think it was so important for him. In that piece, he had spoken to it and, not being totally comfortable at first, and it took some getting used to, but the constant motion and understanding that for them to get where they needed to go, Evan Mobley was going to need to take a bigger role. For them to get where they needed to go, it's in the team's best interest for Darius Garland to handle the bulk of the playmaking. I think it just goes to show the level of maturity that he has, and you can tell, the locker room culture just seems so healthy. The way they interact after games, the way they celebrate each other's successes on the court, it is so damn healthy. And I even think back to the playoffs last year where Darius was struggling, and you could see how badly Donovan wanted him to succeed and how much he was trying to lift him up. And I was listening to Chris Fedor's podcast today, and he was talking about how, when he found out he's being traded to Cleveland, the number one player he was excited to play with was Darius, right? That was what got him the most excited, because he knew what playing with a dynamic guard like that could do for his game. And when we credit, the front office for having the vision to stick with this and to continue and have faith in the core, I think Donovan deserves a lot of credit too for, continuing to be a vocal advocate for it and working so hard to elevate everyone and empower guys. Because if we're going to beat Boston, people don't want to put, you listen to early MVP talks and stuff like that. People still don't want to put Donovan up in that category, and he doesn't get listed in regular top 5 player discussions or top 10 player discussions. But in order for him to knock out those other top 10 and top 5 players, the best way for that to happen is a fresh Donovan Mitchell landing knockout punches like he did against the Boston Celtics after you've had to deal with the first half from Darius Garland, when you've had to deal with what Evan Mobley did to Boston in that road game, right? If you're getting a consistent 1-2 punch from those guys and then Mitchell's coming with the knockout punch, that is the version of this team that can contend for a championship.
Yeah, the one thing I want to say on the Darius relationship is I think, I've said it a lot. One of my, my Carter truisms that culture isn't defined when things are going well. It's how you handle things when they're not. And I think that even matters at a relationship level, because I think that, if Donovan, even if he's not being a dick while Darius is going through the season he goes through last year, but just is rightfully frustrated. He's not, he's not getting what he thought he was going to get from his backcourt mate, and maybe is being a little icy, then when he does come, then when Darius does return to form, it's okay, glad we're doing well together, but
when things are going well,
yeah, but it's got to be so sweet, and I almost feel like the relationship crystallizes in that moment where everything's going wrong and Donovan's still in his corner, and then it just makes it, you're just building on a really strong foundation when things are going well. The backslide just isn't as readily available, and that leads to trust, that leads to better habits, and that's culture. Culture is not showing up when a team's on a 10-game win, or on a 15-game winning streak. Culture is Darius is having a nightmare game and missed 3 wide open threes in a row, but he hit the 4th one, and Donovan goes and meets him, and is in his ear telling him about that. That's who you are, dude. But that's culture. That's what this team has right now, and it's really, really exciting.
It's also what we really wanted to see, right? We wanted, coming out of that 4 finals runs, 4 straight finals, that is the apex from a fan experience. Most fans don't get to experience their team going to the finals 4 straight times and winning a championship and taking down the best team in history. All of that was so much fun. We just wanted a team that we loved, that we could believe in. We had said that we wanted our own version of the grit and grind Grizzlies, and part of that, why we love that team, you and I, was because of the relationships, because of how they had each other's back and how they fed off of each other's success. This team, I think, is better than that team was. I think this team has more upside. But I do think it's the relationships and how they interact with one another that makes it so special, that makes it so much more fun than just the winning. And I think that's the kind of stuff that can carry you through an 82-game regular season. And you're totally right. It's thinking back to that finals run, when we had Dave McMiniman on an earlier version of this podcast, and we heard about, the tensions in that 2015 of, LeBron not understanding what Kyrie was playing through, and then Kyrie got hurt, and, they had to work on the relationship after that. This is almost like the inverse, right? Where Donovan was in Darius's corner through the worst season of his career for a lot of reasons. And you just see it blossom from there. So,
yeah, I'm not sure those. Obviously, I wasn't there. I certainly am not. I'm not even there now. But just from my armchair analysis, I don't know if those teams had the same cultural foundation this team has. They were buoyed by the best player to ever play the sport, which helps. But I think there's a reason when things broke, they broke really fast.
Yep.
For that team, whereas this team is a little bit more able to accommodate some punches.
Yeah. And I think, even from a franchise level, I think it just goes to show, from the time that we've been a fan, we've just seen the Cavs organization grow and grow and grow, right?
It's gotten more stable and comfortable.
The level of stability they have, you learn from these past experiences, you grow together. And I think that just ends up manifesting itself on the court. So, it's not to take away from that stretch.
No,
that was that is as high pressure as it gets, where you get together year one and the goal is a championship. When Donovan Mitchell came to Cleveland, the expectation was, let's avoid the play-in. Let's make the playoffs. And that's a totally different environment. So, I just think it goes to show the growth that we've seen from this core together. And, before we wrap this up, I do want to give a little bit of love, because after the Boston game, I wanted to talk about this guy and we ran out of time. So I don't want to make the same mistake here, because Isaac Okoro has been really good since entering the starting lineup. Earlier in the season, we had talked about how he seemed to be in a season where everyone was off to a good start. Okoro hadn't really found his spot, and he has looked so comfortable. He is playing the Bruce Brown playmaking rolling wing that we wanted to see roll. That pass to Mobley against Boston was phenomenal. Closing with him was great, and you look at how effective the starting lineup has been. 124.5 offensive rating. So again, that would easily be the best offense in NBA history. 113.7 defensive rating. And, it's not too far off from what he's done his entire time with these four guys. Because if you look at the offensive and defensive ratings for the last 3 years together, it's a 122.4 offensive rating and a 114.3 defensive rating in almost 1,100 possessions. He's just worked really well. And it's nice to have that as an option in stretches where someone like Max Strus is out of the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, he's been great. The assist rate's the best it's ever been. He's playing really, really good basketball. Like, is it ever going to be as noisy as I want it to be? Maybe not.
Probably not.
But 10, 4, 3, 1, and 1 is like,
like a countdown.
Yeah, just a little bit more stuffed of a box score compared to years past. Not a crazy amount, but the 3-point percentage is really, really good on good volume. He has taken them. He took one off the dribble against Boston, which was nice.
And that big one he hit was above the break.
Yep. So I ultimately think he continues to grow a little bit. Not a lot. I don't know if a leap is going to come for Isaac, but he certainly is playing up to the contract he signed. He does feel like still a future member of this team. It's a good player to have locked in. I still think defensively he is as good as anyone in the league at the point of attack against smaller guys and bigger guys. I think the idea that he's like only really good against guards is stupid.
I agree.
And yeah, he's a super valuable piece for this team. And, I gotta say that with all that said, I just still am really excited for Max to get back. I think the entire Cavaliers fan base has forgotten the degree to which he was the best role player on the team last year. Like, I think
from an impact standpoint too, like the on-off numbers.
Just watching him. Just watch the games. Like, the playmaking, the two-man game with Mobley was unbelievable.
I can't wait to see what he helps unlock with Evan Mobley. Like, he was great with last year's version. I really think that those two can do something special.
Yeah, I mean, just like the edge he plays with, the nastiness. Mad Max, we liked calling him. Like, I think those are all things that the team really could use. I think he's going to really like playing with Ty Jerome and some bench lineups. Like, I just really think he's going to
like playing with point guards.
Yeah, no kidding. So yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be really, really fun. I mean, there's more fun ahead, even though the first quarter mark has been about as fun as it can be.
Yeah, and after a game where we dodged some bullets from the injury bug and whatnot, like we just got to continue to enjoy every time that we do get to see these guys out together, because it is so clear that they work so well together. And shout out to Okoro, man, because career highs, and when you look at the per 36 numbers, career high in 3-point attempts, in assists, in rebounds, in blocks, and steals. Like, it's not going to jump off the page, as you said, but he's starting to fill the box score more. He's starting to impact the game in more ways. And I think the constant movement of the Cavs offense really does suit him well. And I think it's so easy to forget he is the same age as Evan Mobley. Like, yep. So like when you have a core four that is locked up for the long term, that is going to be together, when you have someone like Isaac Okoro, who works very well with those guys locked up, when you have Max Strus, who's locked up, you have valuable role players in Karis LeVert and Ty Jerome that you have some level of team control over. You found a great role player and rotation guy in Dean Wade that can flex into the starting lineup as well. Like, they're just in a really, really healthy spot, and that's without getting into the projects that we're excited about. Craig Porter Jr., Jalen Tyson, Luke Travers, Amani Bates. Like, it just feels like this is a situation that does have a decent runway moving forward.
Yeah, man. What a team. What a fun time. I can't wait.
What a team. I'm going to miss them when they're playing 2 games in 11 days. That's going to get weird.
Ridiculous. What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do with this?
We will be coming next live post-game after the Miami Heat game on Sunday. So 3 games in 4 nights. We'll have a lot to talk about then. Big thanks to everyone that tuned in live on YouTube. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Click that notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.